Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Masters and I'm Occupational Therapy Assistant Student at Washburn University. I am in Rotation 2 of Level 2 Fieldwork at the Whole Person in Kansas City, Missouri. I am working with a program called Money Follows the Person. It is state funded, and what we do is we transition people from nursing homes back out into the community to independent living. There are some qualifications in order to be approved for Money Follows the Person, and it is that the person has to be coming from a nursing home. Medicaid has to be paying on their bed for the past 60 days, and they have to have a source of income. The Whole Person as a whole is a nonprofit organization, and so with that, Money Follows the Person. With the Missouri side, if the person is approved, we call them consumers, they will get a $2,400 budget. So with that $2,400, we're able to pay their first month's rent, the security deposit, groceries, and household items. We work with the Kansas side too, but it's very rare. I've worked with one person from the Kansas side. The rest have been Missouri side since my time here. Kansas side's a little different. We work with Sunflower and Aetna there. And with that, we can't pay for their first month's rent or their deposit. We can't buy them groceries. We can only get household items. So they have a stricter kind of way of going about it, but we are allowed to still be able to work with them. So for my in-service project, I created a student manual binder, kind of just an overview of everything here at the Whole Person as well as Money Follows the Person. I created this because when I got here, we didn't really have any binders to look at. And so we were just handed a bunch of papers. And so I just kind of wanted to create something that's more organized that future students or interns here at the Whole Person and even our current CIs right now can look at and refer back to if they have any questions. So with this, I created a table of contents. It's 3 pages, nothing too intimidating. It's just a lot of information that I covered in this because it's one that an intern or a student in the future will need to know. So there's 18 tabs total. The first tab is the Whole Person, so it's just an overview of everything. So the brand manual, brochures and handouts. And then the second tab is emergency. With the emergency, I created a map route packet, a zone 5 sheet and alarm system. The zone 5 sheet is where we are right now, which is level 2. We're on the 2nd floor, so it kind of just shows what everything to do in the event of emergency. Tab 3 is computer, phone, and printer guide. So with that, I have a computer usage packet, phone reference guide packet, and then phone list and extensions list of everyone that works here at the Whole Person. And then I have the printer and badge registration sheet. And then the next tab is Money Follows the Person. That is going to be one of the main tabs that everybody looks at. And within that, I just included both of my CI's business cards, MFP brochures, the MFP magazine information sheet, kind of just showing what Money Follows the Person is. The MFP State of Missouri manual. So when you're an intern or a student here, you are required to look through that, so you have an idea. And then the MFP policies and procedures packet, same here. Both of those are super thick packets, but it's required when you're an intern to look over those so you can have a general idea. Then we have an MFP quick reference guide, a checklist for transition, MFP acronyms, and MFP sit to stand transition assistive technology, and then an assistive technology for independent living guide, and then an MFP assessment considerations for funding. So then the next tab is documentation. So we have a SIL suite management cheat sheet and a SIL data capture procedure sheet. So here at the Whole Person, the documentation system is the SIL suite data management. And so with that, everything, a consumer's information is all in there. It's a very hard program to navigate, but once you get used to it, it's easy peasy. Next, we have insurance. This is another big one. So within insurance is the benefit terminology sheet, Social Security fact sheet, SSI versus SSDI, quick reference between the difference, Medicare versus Medicaid difference guide, Missouri Health Net packet, and then a Missouri Health Net application. And then I also included on the Kansas side CanCare. So I have a CanCare information packet and then a CanCare application. So then the next tab is another tab that's a big one. It's consumer paperwork sample forms. And so within that is everything that you use when you work with a consumer, so from start to end. The first one is just an MFP table of contents sheet. So it starts with number 1 and goes all the way down to the end of order of transitions of how money follows the person works. You start off with the referral, and then you end with the transition plan. So next we have the MFP referral sheet, and then you have the pre-options counseling that you do with the social worker before you communicate with the consumer. Once you complete that, you then have the options counseling, and that is where you get to interview and get to know the consumer a little more. Once the options counseling is completed, then you then send it to the social worker, and the social worker will then print it off and have the consumer sign it. Typically when we send over the options counseling, we also send over the independent living document and the eligibility form, and then the rights and responsibility form for the consumer to sign as well. Once that is all filled out, then you'll get the money follows the person approval sheet, and that means they've been approved by the state of Missouri, and then we can continue with the next step of getting them housing. Once they find a house, we will then complete a transition plan. Once the transition plan is completed, we will then send over the consumer a grocery and shopping list. They will highlight everything that they think they will need for their new place, and then we will go shopping for them. Once all of that's done, we then have monthly contacts. So we typically, on Missouri side, we follow them for a year. So from the start of their day they move in to the end. So a year after that, the first 3 months you contact the consumer twice a month. After that, it's once a month. And those monthly contacts is just a check-in on the consumer and make sure they're doing all right. Next with tab, we have an options counseling transition coordination contract. And then we have housing. Housing's a big one. So typically we work with consumers that have clean records, and they have criminal records too. So we have all different housing options. So we have like a low income based apartments packet that we give them, and then if they have a felon or a bad criminal history, we then give them potential felon friendly apartment complexes. Then we have community resources. This is what we give consumers once they have transitioned out in the community. So we have the community TWP community resource list, emergency help general resources, and then a programs resource list. And then we also have transportation because typically most of our consumers don't have a vehicle or way of getting around, so we give them information about transportation. So with that, I've included an accessible transportation list, and then the Ride KC Freedom application. Ride KC Freedom is the general public transportation, so that main bus system that most people take. Then we have the SNAP food benefits, which is food stamps. Typically almost always our consumers qualify for food stamps just because they are low income, but there are some times where consumers won't qualify because their income is a little higher than what is expected. And so with that, I just included some overview of that and then an application. And then we have the household and grocery shopping list. So with this is just a sample of what household items and grocery items that a consumer would need. And then we have a budgeting. So when we complete the options counseling, we always ask the consumer if they would like a monthly budget, and free of cost, of course. And some consumers do, some consumers don't, so I included it. So it's how to make a monthly budget sheet, and then a personal monthly budget sheet. And then I also included on the budgeting is ways to save money on groceries. Next, we have a volunteer request form. So it's just the volunteer request form because at TWP, there's a bunch of volunteer opportunities. So, if you're an intern and want to go out of what you're interning and volunteer at the TWP, you'll fill out that form. Then we have benefits and application resources. Typically, once our consumer gets out into the community, we give them a bunch of applications for a bunch of things that we think they might qualify for. The main one is the Missouri Assistive Technology application. And then these last two tabs I wasn't going to include, but I thought they were pretty informational for future students or for our CIs to kind of look back on, so they can have a general idea of what they've done in past as students. So I included a level 2 student fieldwork sample forms, and that's just anywhere from our a weekly log sample form to the fieldwork data form to the site-specific objectives checklist to the SEFWE, and I just completed those and submitted or put in the back binder some blank copy forms of that. And then on the last one is just educator resources. Since we're a non-traditional and a nonprofit, some of these won't apply, like the SOAP notes, but I just went ahead and included them. The main one that could apply is the suggested weekly objectives and learning opportunities packet. This is kind of just a breakdown of start from finish from the 8 weeks that we were here, and kind of just giving the CIs a general overview of what to expect, or what the students are expected to be doing. So here we have the student manual binder, and on the front page I included just a list of everything that I included, the tabs in the binder, and I tried to match them up to best as possible to the colors of these tabs. So say someone just wants to go see what consumer documents that we use, they can just kind of look at the color, go find the tab over here so they don't have to go through it. So kind of just to go through it quick here. So I included, the table of contents, and then we've got the MFP, and then all of those information packets and brochures and stuff included. And then we have the emergency, which we are in level 2. We're on level 2. So this is just the main of what level 2 is and what to do in the event of emergency. Then we have the computer, phone, and printer guides. This is actually handy because the computers are hard to navigate at first. And so you have that. And then you have like the phone lists. And then you have the printer badge form. Following that is Money Follows the Person. So this is the main tab, and that just has all of that information that I spoke about earlier. Those big packets of the state of Missouri, and then the policies and procedures. Following that, we have documentation. We just have those 2 cheat sheets that I talked about for the SIL data documentation. Then we go on to insurance. This is another big one because we typically just work with Missouri Health Net, but we have occasions worked with others. And so this is just information describing all of those, and then this Missouri Health Net application. Okay. And then we have the consumer paperwork. This is the one that's very important. And that will be important for future students. It's just everything that we do when we work with the consumer. And so these are just sample forms. The biggest one and the hardest challenging one of all of those would be the transition plan, just because it's a lot of information, because it's that final step before they move out. Then we have that options, counseling, coordination. And then we have housing. This is another big one. So really typically with this, we give the consumer a big packet that has a list of all the apartments that are income based, and we send that over to the social worker, and they print it out for the consumer to start their search. And like I said, we do have felon friendly options housing for those people that have criminal backgrounds. Then we have community resources that we give the consumers when they get out in the community. And then we have transportation. And so just showing them accessible transportation that's provided, and then that KC Ride Freedom application. And then we have the food stamps. And so this is what every consumer gets when they move out. And then we fill out that application with them, and then we submit it for them. Then we have that sample household grocery and shopping list. We just give these to the consumers and have them write on there if there's nothing on there that they think they need. Like if we forgot something on here, we have them write it in and we'll get it for them. And then we have the budgeting. So just making that monthly budget with them if they choose to want that. And then we have the volunteer request form, like we spoke about, applications and benefit resources. And then lastly, we just have those 2 that I talked about, the level 2 fieldwork student sample forms, and then the educator resource sample forms. All in all, this experience was a different experience here at the Whole Person, just because it's a non-traditional setting, and so we're not doing those, basic ADLs and cooking and cleaning. We are more transitioning people back from those nursing homes out into the community. And so it was a rewarding experience because I learned a lot. Not only did I learn about transitioning people from the nursing home out into the community, but you get to communicate with social workers, nursing staff, therapy departments, apartment complexes, and you just get to learn about all the different services and resources that are offered in the community from the whole person. So it was just a unique experience overall, and I really enjoyed my time here. So thank you guys.